Hi, Dave Kites again from the Oto Wood Shop. We're going to make a new video for the drum sander. We have an old video on the website now, but it was made in 2018. It's gotten a lot of hits, over 8,000 hits. But anyway, it's a little outdated. There's some things we want to emphasize more than we did in that video, so we're going to remake it. This is our 1632 jet drum sander, and it's very old. It's getting very old. It's probably, well, I know it's more than 8 years old. It's probably close to 10 years old. But they don't make them any different anymore, so all the problems I'm going to tell you about are still there, even if you buy a brand new one, okay? Now, the problems really are not problems with the machine. They're problems with the operators. So the reason we're making this video is to help people who are unaware of the very fine points of how to operate this machine correctly. We'll get a little more information and hopefully avoid some problems. It looks very simple and it looks rugged, but it's neither. It's not simple and it's not really rugged. I'm going to raise the drum up. You would think that you could just come in and say, okay, I'm going to put this up here, and yeah, that looks about right, and I'm going to take my piece of wood now, and after I turn this on, I'm just going to go through there and sand it. But there's really a lot more to it than that. And if you don't do it right, what happens is you'll end up either tearing this paper off or ruining this belt, the carrier belt, or blinding the paper with paint or pitch or finishes of any sort, shellac, varnish, old furniture you want to clean up. This is not the machine to do it on. You want to take old finishes off on the planer down there. And you also want to use the planer for thickness reduction, down to a pretty close figure of dimension, because this is not intended to make dimensional changes. It's a sander. It's not a planer, it's not a jointer, it's a sander. And so if you try to take a very much of a cut with this, the paper doesn't tolerate it. It gets very hot. The drum is going quite fast. It's a sander on steroids, as I used to say. And what happens is that friction causes any paint or finish, glue, even the glue that's inside the plies of plywood. If you sand through a ply of plywood and you hit the glue layer, that glue is going to melt. The finish is going to melt. All those paint and all those things turn gooey. If you got pitchy wood, what happens when the pitch gets hot? Yeah, that's right, it gets gooey. And when that gooey melted stuff hits this sandpaper, it fills in all the voids, called blinding. It blinds the paper, and now the paper doesn't sand anymore. And you can't get it out. We've got these rubber cleaners, but they don't take the pitch out, they don't take the paint out. That's melted in there, and once it cools, it's in there. It doesn't come out. All this does is take sawdust off of here. It does help, and I'm going to show you how to use it later, but it doesn't correct using it for finish or glue. So when the paper does get blinded and it doesn't sand anything anymore, you're done, and everybody's done until the paper gets changed. And it costs us these days about $10, a little less, but not much less than $10 to change the paper every time. It's not the money, it's the time that the machine is down, and it's the maintenance effort to change the paper. It's not simple. It takes a while to change the paper. Now we're back to tell you again, I've looked for other machines that don't have these, make the paper easy to change, make it so it doesn't get hot, make it this and make it that. Can't find any. The closest thing we come to in flat sanding like this that doesn't have these problems is our Flatmaster sander, which we did buy when I found it. And it has proven to be quite a useful item. It doesn't get hot. The way that operates is different. It works by centrifugal force. This is mounted, papers on this one is mounted on Velcro. It stretches a little bit when it spins and it comes up high enough and it sands, but it doesn't get hot. This one, the drum sander, your wood has to go through the space between the belt and the drum. There's no relief. So if you're taking off too much, it's really grinding it up and it's really getting hot. So that's the difference. Now, this is a wonderful machine if it's used properly. It will do a really nice job of flattening small pieces or even long pieces and making them nice and flat and smooth. We only put 80 grit on our machine. The reason we do that is even softer woods, maybe it's not rock maple or hard maple or something, maybe it's some other wood that's not quite that hard, but some woods still have oil in them and pitch in them, and they will blind the paper themselves just from that little bit of stuff in there. But if you're careful with it and take very small cuts off, finishes at a time, it doesn't do that. It doesn't blind, it doesn't get too hot, and it works fine, and it does a nice job. So it's not a bad machine, you just have to use it right. So we're going to talk more about that in detail, about how to use it right. But that's the reason that this is the most problematic machine in the shop to keep running. Now, there are lots of reminders here. Every time you come in to use this, the reminders are here, and to help you avoid the problems that we've been talking about. We've got not for removing wood finishes, no finished wood, and a piece of paper here mounted on the table with a sign with notes on it that says the paper was blinded by sanding soft wood, probably a piece of pine with pitch in it, even though pitch is the sap, okay? And when it gets hot, it melts. It's completely blinded. I mean, this was extreme. The person that did this just kept going and going and going, obviously, and just completely blinded the paper. So it says, observe the limitations and cautions posted, because this sign is here, has been here for years, okay? Tells you about clogging and how to use the rubber, when to use the rubber cleaner, and to watch the belt and all. It's all on here, okay? These things are here every time you come in. The great big dust collection pipe and hose are here, and the gate is over here. How can you miss it? Okay, that's closed, that's open. See the blank place here? Goes down, covers up the hole, that's closed. You pull it up, there's a hole in the other end, down here. Now it's open. How can you miss it? Well, they get missed all the time. People come in with their piece of wood, and they do this, and then they do this, and they turn it on, and they sand. And if this is in the way, they put it over here. Seen it done many times. Don't read it, never. Had one fella said had dust all over here after he finished sanding. So I checked the video. He didn't open the gate. I called him up. Oh no, I had the gate open. I always open the gate. I said, no, I don't think so. Yeah, it was open. I had it open. Somebody else must have done that. I said, can you meet me in the shop? And he was a good enough guy. He came down. I showed him the video. The man just, you know, God, I would have sworn I didn't go. You need to pay attention when you're in the shop. In general, it's a good idea. There's a lot of machines in here that can hurt you. So pay attention. And when you're using this one, try to remember this video. And if you don't remember it, it's going to be on the website. Go look at it again before you come down and use it, please. Okay. So there's reminders. You got to go slow. Okay. So let's take a look now at how we can use this machine properly to do some sanding. Remember, it's a sander, it's not a planer. So the first thing you want to consider is my stock. This is not suitable. It's got paint on it. It's got a lot of paint on that side, okay? Anything with paint, finish, glue, not here. Take it down to the planer. Maybe later I'll show you how to plane this off. It's real easy. This board is probably fir or some kind of heart pine. It's not soft pine, and it would probably sand all right, except for the finishes that we got on it. So we don't want to use that. Incidentally, if you want to learn more about the planer, there is a video on the planer too, and it does show you how to take off finishes and plane thin things and so on. So it's all in there. Let's use this instead. Here we have a piece of reasonably hard pine of some sort. I can see the grain is dense. I can see there's no pitch on it. You know, sometimes you get these cheap 2x4s and they've got gooey pitch right on the surface of them. Okay, that is certainly something you don't want to put on this machine. Okay, but we're going to take a chance with this, and I'll show you how we're going to check when we get started to see that we're not damaging the paper before we do too much damage. Okay, but your stock needs to be pretty straight, pretty flat. You can't have a twisted piece of wood go through here. It's just, you're going to put extreme pressure on the drum when the corners come through, and and you're not going to end up with a flat piece anyways. So it just doesn't work. The planer, with a couple of tricks, you can get the planer to take and make the board pretty flat. And actually, the Flatmaster sander, if you take that twisted board, and I've done it with boards with a fair amount of twist in them, and you run it over that Flatmaster enough times and flip it over and then flip it again and rotate it, and you do that for a while, it comes out flat, believe it or not. The only way I've ever seen to take twist out of a piece of wood. But anyway, that's that one. This is this one. So flat, straight, not so important to be straight in this direction, but flat and straight and reasonably smooth and uniform in thickness. Okay, again, this is not to make things uniformly thick, it's to sand. When you got real thin pieces like under 3/8 of an inch and you're trying to sand it down to a particular dimension or get it down to a particular dimension, I can do it on the planer because I got some more experience maybe than some people do. And so most people try to do it on the sander. And there's nothing wrong with that if they're small pieces, okay? And the right material, all right? And you can do that. So in that sense, yes, it is a dimensioning operation, but only for thin things and only if you're trying to get real precise and only if it's hard wood and not gooey. Generally, we're just trying to get a decent finish on usually a fairly wide piece of stock. If you have a narrow piece of stock, the Flatmaster will give you a good finish. Actually, that has 100 or 120 grit paper on it. Gives you a better finish than this 80 grit paper will. So if I have a decent piece of stock, now I need to focus on my machine. Okay. So I'm going to check that my gate is open. I like to check that first. And then, in order to run this machine and several others along the windows over there, the big dust collector has to be running. They're interlocked. So Ben's going to do me the favor of turning this on. And now, one of the nice things is, anymore, we can still talk even when that's running. In the old days, before the sound enclosure, you couldn't do that. But you have to have that on. So now this is energized, or the power is to it anyways, okay? Now let's look at the switches. Well, before we look at the switches, so now there's two ways to get started. One is, I call a dead start. You put your piece on here without the drum running, without the belt moving. Raise this up till the wood easily goes under. Spin the wheel and lower it down slowly until it touches. Whoa. Right there. Take a turn over, 3/4 or so, and it's free. And now we're going to, when we turn it on, we're just going to run the belt. Now I know that I've got 3/4 of a turn till it touches. So I'll just come down half of that, or I mean a half a turn instead of 3/4, just to be safe. And I'm missing. Now I don't want to lower this while it's running through. If I do that, part of my board is thinner than the other part. And when I try to go back through, I have to remember that it's as big on this end and little on this end. So just don't change it. Now you heard it just touch a little bit as it went through here. This piece of wood was not uniformly thick, and it took just a little bit off of here. So it was a good idea to just come back most of the way that I had gone up, come back most of the way down. Now I'm going to turn it just 1/4 of a turn or so. Now I'm going to put the stock in at an angle. So in the beginning it did not sand, and it picked up right here and took a small amount off all the way across to the end. This has rounded corners, obviously. If I want to get it all the way flat, I go another 1/4 of a turn. Put this at an angle. Push it what? Turn it over. Now I got to keep this so it'll make it. Now you notice I did not turn the wheel between the last pass and this pass. But it's sanding. I can hear it. Not sanding much. And because this was a fresh side that hadn't been sanded before, it didn't clean it up completely because it just took a very small amount off, okay? So I'm going to do a little more. I'm going to run the same side again because I got this side clean already. You see, the 1/4 of a turn is effective. We're sanding every time. And yes, it takes time. If you're going to take a 1/4 of an inch of material off a 1/64 of an inch at a time, it's going to take a lot of passes. This is not a planer, this is a sander. And it's doing a good job as a sander. You see? It's cleaning that up. Okay? Now I'm going to run my original side through again without changing the wheel. And so now, I know you can't feel it, but I can. It is smoother than this side. Because I went through without changing the wheel and took a very light pass. Let's see what happens if I tried it one more time. Same piece of wood, didn't move the adjustment. Sanding it. And our finish is getting even better, okay? So as a sander, it's a great machine. If I wanted to get this down to exactly something like 5/8 of an inch, and I'm only a 32nd over right now, yeah, with several passes I can do that on this machine and not have to fool with the planer. I'm going to make one more adjustment on this side, and then when I got both sides cleaned up good, I'm going to run it through straight next time so that the paper and the grain are lined up. and I'll get even a smoother finish. So that's pretty clean without changing the adjustment. Taking a little. Okay, so that's pretty much that. Now, I jumped over several things, went right into the sanding, so I'm going to go back. Now you know about the wheel and the quarter turns, and this is down and this is up. And you know how to start with the dead start. This knob controls the speed of the belt. The belt will run without the drum running. Okay? So you can set your belt speed and say, yeah, that looks about right. This is too fast from almost everything. 60, 70 on this scale, I don't know what that means, but 60 or 70, 50, 60, 70, in that range is typically a good speed. If you've got a wide piece and you're going to be sanding a lot off all the way across, slow it down. The machine's got to work harder, obviously. Okay, slow it down, 30, 40, and let it go through. Okay, so that's the speed of the belt. This runs the drum. So as soon as I pull that on, the drum starts rotating. The drum rotates so the top is going away from you. When I was sanding these boards, there's a little bit of white showing on the drum here. Okay? I wasn't blinding in any way the paper. This is pretty clean sawdust. This mark was already on there, so I'm not taking credit for that one. But what I'm going to show you is you see that light sawdust in there, cleaned out real quick, one pass with the rubber. Where the line that I was talking about before that I didn't put in here, where somebody did melt something into the paper, it's still there. This won't take it out. It's not a bad line. This is nothing to worry about, okay? This condition here is disaster. This is nothing to worry about. But this will work on the light sawdust. You should frequently look in here and see what's happening to be sure you're not running into something you didn't anticipate. And you should frequently clean off the sawdust. Keeps the paper more open and does a better job of sanding, obviously. Okay? Now something else that we should be watching when we use this is when we turn the belt on, the belt is doing a really nice job these days of tracking. This belt tracking is adjustable, but if it's tracking okay for you, don't try to adjust it. It's a little tricky. You can look at the roller right here and see that the edge of the paper is staying the same distance from the edge of the roller. So it's tracking straight, and that's what we want. You should, now and then, while you're using it, look at this and make sure it's still tracking straight. If it starts to move over to one side or the other, stop and get some help and get it tracking again. If you let it track off the edge, it doesn't bump itself and stop moving over. It keeps going and tears itself up. So don't let that happen. Get some help. We can change the tracking. If the belt's been stretched, we have spare belts. We can correct it, but don't let it track off to one side to the point where it gets damaged. Okay? All right, the second way to start with this machine, I call it the live start or the hot start or the running start, okay, is to raise this up So it's very clearly clearing. And then double check, yep. And we can turn on this, okay? Now, turn the belt on, and I'm holding the wood so it doesn't disappear through the machine, okay? But it's not any tension on it, I'm just holding it. Now I'm going to slowly lower the drum. It took it out of my hand, so I know I'm close. So now I'm going to go about a quarter. Still missing. Don't change it when it's running. Complicates life greatly. Still didn't hit. There, I hear just a little touch there. Quarter. Sanding. So we worked our way up slowly and carefully, and we got to the point finally where we're touching. Now we can go to the quarter turn things and flip our stock, go this way, go that way, just like we did before. That was about a quarter turn. Took off a bunch, still got lines there, but I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Hear it touching? And then another quarter turn. You can see that this takes time. That side's pretty good. I'm going to finish up this side now. Much better. So depending on how good you want it, you keep making passes, and then when you think you got it just about where you want it, make a straight pass on both sides and you're done. A little light sawdust accumulation, nothing serious. So pretty good job there. Cleaned up nice. Turn the belt off. Now when you're done, don't leave the drum close to the belt. Now we have some members who are not very experienced in this, still a little unaware of what the proper procedures are, and we had an incident actually. Came in, turned the machine on, and then adjusted this. Turned out this was already very close to the bed. He turned it to the down, and he hit it. and he tore the paper, not this one, the belt, this one, not this one, but another one, and he burned right through it for about 4 or 5 inches on one edge before he knew it had happened. So to help those people a little bit, leave it well up off of the belt, and we'll know. Everybody be safe. Okay. So then when you're finished, you need to do things kind of in reverse order. You need to raise that up. Helps you to clean out underneath it if there happened to be sawdust around here. You notice it did a pretty good job of picking up the sawdust as long as I had the gate open. If the gate's not open, believe me, this makes a lot of sawdust. It will make a big cloud here, okay? So you don't want to have that to happen. Remember to open the gate, turn on the dust collector. I know you'll turn on the dust collector because it won't run without that. But you may not remember to open the gate. You can hear the change in the sound because it really does suck a lot of air. It's a great system. It works. So we did all that. We did that. We're going to vacuum up. Don't forget to vacuum both sides of the table, under here, and then the floor. Do a good job. It'll be all done. And then I just turn off the dust collector and it's ready for the next guy.